Welcome, I'm Jane from Computer Science Cafe. During the next 10 minutes, I am going to take you through using variables in Python and dealing with user inputs and dynamic responses. If you have never coded before, don't worry, I will help your journey from zero to hero in 10 clear stages. Okay, let's get started. Variables are like a container to store things. Just like if you were going to store some cookies, you would put them in a container and label the container cookies, and when you put your hand in the container labeled cookies, you would expect to pull some cookies out. Well, variables are not dissimilar. Let's take a look at how variables work in Python. Here I am going to create a variable called food, and I am going to put the value of cookie into the variable. The process of creating a variable is called defining a variable, and the process of putting a value in the variable is called assigning the variable a value. Before we start, I will do a simple print statement just to check everything is working in Visual Studio Code. So let's type print, bracket, speech marks, then hello, and then we can run this program to check it works. If you are using Visual Studio Code, then click the Run icon in the top right, and you should get the output in the terminal at the bottom of the screen. Okay, let's delete this to learn how to use variables. To create a variable, simply give it a meaningful name. Here I will call my variable food, then I will make it equal to the value of cookie. Notice I did not put the variable name food in speech marks. This is how Python knows it is a variable, but I did put the value of cookie in speech marks. This is how Python knows it is a string of text. Now if we print this variable by typing print, brackets, and place the variable name inside, remember, do not put the variable name in speech marks. We can then run this program and we will see that the value of cookie has been printed. Let's create another variable. This time we will store the value of dog. I will call my variable pet, but you can give it a different name if you want. So, pet equals, brackets, speech marks and dog. Then to print this variable, print, brackets, pet. We can see when we run the program we get two print statements as expected. Before we go on to look at some of the rules of variable names, let's have a quick look at using assigning numbers to variables. Here I will create two variables containing numbers, however I will put one number in speech marks and the other not. These are two very different values. The first number in speech mark, Python thinks it is text, so we could not do any calculation with this number as it is treated like a letter. To let Python know it is a number, simply leave out the speech marks like the value stored in the number2 variable. Let's remove the speech marks from the first number and then we can do a simple calculation. For example, we could create another variable called answer and assign the value of number 1 plus number 2. If we run this now, we can see nothing happens because we have not told Python to output this answer. So let's print the variable answer. We can now see the calculation is done as expected. Okay, before we move on, let's look at some rules of variable names. Looking at 4 basic rules of defining variables. They cannot start with a number, they cannot contain a space, you cannot use reserved words, and no special characters such as full stops. Let's look at some reserved words that cannot be used as variables. Python has many command words which you will get used to as you progress with programming. Here are some of the popular command words that you cannot use as variables. Next, we will look at some guidelines for good practice when creating variables. To code like a pro, you should not use single-letter variables. They should all have meaningful names. Secondly, when you use two words, join them by using camel case or the underscore method, as can be seen in this example of first name. Okay, let's continue with the code. I will delete what we have done so far, and we will now look at asking the user a question and saving the answer into a variable. We will start by asking the user what their name is, and then respond with hello plus their name. Okay, let's write this line of code, then see what each part does. First, create a variable with a meaningful name. I will call mine username, then make this variable equal a value to be input. Then we need to give the user a prompt. So brackets, speech marks, and a message, for example, please enter your name. then close speech marks and close brackets. Let's run to test. Okay, I will enter my name after the prompt, Jane, and press enter. Great, we can see that this works. Let's just take a closer look at this to see what is happening. Firstly, the input command allows the user to type something in. The string in the brackets is a prompt for the user so they know what to type in. This can be anything you want. Lastly, the value that the user types in when you run your program is saved in the variable. Now let's expand this program by joining the string of text saying hello with the variable username. This is called concatenation. So, print equals, brackets, speech marks, hello, close speech marks plus the variable username, then close brackets. Now we can run the program to see how it works. Okay, so I have a prompt to ask my name, so I will type Jane. And now yeah, it has responded with hello Jane. Let's add a little more to this to make it a bit more friendly. After the variable username I will type, plus, speech marks, then, great to meet you, close speech marks and close brackets. And run to check. So, Jane, and cool, it works. You now know how to create variables and store values in them. You know how to take a user input and store it in a variable, and you know how to join a variable with a string of text. Lastly, we will look at doing the same, but this time with numbers. Okay, so let's delete this, and then we will have a look at using numbers. So if I create a variable called number1 and make this an input, then give the user a prompt, please enter number. And then I will ask for the second number, so number 2 equals, input, speech marks, please enter another number. I'm just going to put a colon and a space so it looks neat for the end user. And then if I do answer equals number 1 plus number 2, we will see this won't work as expected. So print answer. And then run the program. And I will type in 10 and 10. We can see that 1010 is printed. Obviously we know the answer should be 20, but what's happening here is that Python thinks this number1 variable is a string being text and treated like letters. So we have to explicitly tell Python this is going to be an integer number. To do that, type int into here before the input and then close two brackets. It is quite frequent for students to forget to close the two brackets. So remember this or you will get an error. If we do the same here, we have now told Python that this number is going to be an integer. An integer is a number with no decimal. The answer becomes number 1, which is an integer, plus number 2, which is an integer. So let's run this program again. And this time if I put 10 and 10, we can now see that the answer is 20. Okay, lastly, joining a number with a string to make this program more user-friendly. So we can add a string and speech marks to say, the answer is. Then we can close the speech mark plus the variable answer. But the problem with this is we cannot join a number with a string of text. Therefore, we can tell Python that for this occasion treat this as a string by adding str. This enables us to join a number with string of text. Now let's see how this works. 10 and 10. And now we can see this is a nice, neat, user-friendly output of the answer is 20. Amazing! You have completed stage 2 of going from 0 to hero with Python coding. I would recommend testing your skills by completing some of the coding challenges from computersciencecafe.com. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video where we will look at Python operators. Bye for now.